Welcome to Council's first hybrid council meeting and welcome back to our public gallery. We have an audience here, which I'm very pleased about. While we have tested our technology, we've come to expect the unexpected. So please bear with us if we need to work through any challenges today. We've had a few already. Just a reminder, members of the public do not have a right to address council, may only do so with the consent of the chair or by prior arrangement. Live streaming. As the meeting chair, I give my consent for this open council meeting to be streamed live, recorded and published online in accordance with council's live streaming policy and governance rules. To members of the public joining us in the gallery today, by attending this public meeting of the council, you are consenting to your image, voice and comments being recorded and published. The chair and or the CEO have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination or interruption of live streaming. Such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances where deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of the debate is considered misleading, defamatory or potentially inappropriate to be published. In the event of technical issues with the live stream, the meeting will continue and a recording will be placed on Council's website. Attendees are advised that they may be subject to legal action if their actions result in inappropriate and or unacceptable behaviour and or comments. Thank you. The COVID-19 Omnibus Bill 2020 provision allows council meeting attendance via electronic means. Councillors are deemed as being in attendance if they can hear proceedings, they can see other members in attendance and can be seen by other members, and they can be heard to speak. Mobile telephones, please turn off all mobile telephones, or in the case of emergency, please advise the chair and switch to silent mode. Now, it brings us to the statement of acknowledgement. West Coast Shire Council acknowledge the Bunurong as the traditional owners and custodians of the lands and waters and pays respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, for they hold the memories, the traditions, the culture and law. West Coast Shire Council celebrates the opportunity to embrace and empower the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island communities in their diversity. West Coast Shire Council will create opportunities for future recognition and respectful partnerships that will honour the traditional owners and custodians and Aboriginal and or Torres Strait Islander peoples. Now I call on Councillor Rooks to read the councillor statement.
Thank you, Mayor Whelan. All members of this council pledge to the Bass Coast Shire community to consider every item listed on this agenda, based on the individual merits of each item, without bias or prejudice, by maintaining an open mind and disregarding councillors' personal interests so as to avoid any conflict with our public duty.
I have no...
Councillor having a conflict of interest in an item will make a proper prior disclosure to the meeting and will not participate in the debate or vote on the issue.
My apologies, Councillor Rooks, for interrupting you inadvertently there. I have no apologies for this meeting and there are no declarations of interest. So brings us to the minutes of the council meeting held on the 16th of February 2022, and I ask a councillor to move and a councillor to second the motion that the minutes of the council meeting held on the 16th of February 2022 be confirmed. That's Councillor Bowe and Councillor Tesfaye. Those in favour? Against? Carried. Now, public question time. Due to the number of questions for this month and this being the first meeting in hybrid mode, question time will be taken on notice for this meeting and will be responded to in the minutes, which will be published by on Friday. Petitions. We have a petition to Seal Bay Road and Foreshore Road. And I have a councillor move the resolution or the motion as in the agenda papers. Councillor Halstead, Councillor Lasser. Councillor Halstead, do you wish to speak? Or?
No need to.
We'll put that motion to the council. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. Notices of motion. The first one is F1 244-22 Wonthaggi to Inverloch Inland Trail. Councillor Les Larke. Now, Councillor Larke, would you read or tell us what your motion is about without speaking to it, please?
Thank you, Mayor. It's simply a notice of motion in relation to the Wonthaggi to Inverloch Inland Trail.
All right, is there a seconder to this motion? Councillor Kent. Councillor Larke.
Thank you. I'd like to paint a little bit of context with this around this notice of motion. The Inverloch Marine Park is a Victorian state government project with the objective of creating and consolidating coastal walking and cycling trails from San Remo to Inverloch. This consolidated coastal walking and cycling trail from San Remo to Inverloch is said to be fully funded by the Victorian state government. The Wonthaggi to Inverloch Inland Trail falls outside the scope of the Inverloch Marine and Coastal Park project, as does enabling cycling along existing roads between Wonthaggi and Cape Patterson Harmers Haven, though they are noted as possible opportunities to enhance active transport along the coast. Cape Patterson to Inverloch Road and the creation of a new separated trail for walkers and cyclists is under consideration by the Victorian state government and is reliant upon the findings and recommendations of the Coastal Hazard Assessment and planning undertaken by the Inverloch Regional and Strategic Partnership and future investigations and initiatives by the Department of Transport. I will speak more specifically in my summing up, but I'd like to hear Councillor discourse at this point in time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Larke. Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, the only thing I really want to say in regards to this is that I'm in support of this path, but I believe the information from points 2, 4 and 5 would be of benefit to me. That's all I have to say, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, any other councillor wish to speak to the motion?
Can I have a point of clarification?
I'll take the clarification first.
Yeah. Are we talking about two separate paths from this? Is a single or a single path?
I'll ask Mr. Sturton to answer that.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. So the two separate paths, the Inverloch Trail is the state government Parks Victoria led coastal trail. This is an inland commuter trail from that crosses overland from Wonthaggi to Inverloch.
And that's a council project.
And that is a council project, but we can receive state government funding as well to $3 million for the project. So it's a co-funded project.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Lasser.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And the councillors. The Wonthaggi to Inverloch Shared Pathway was endorsed by council, and that's councillors, in 2016 as a part of the aspirational pathway network plan. There's a strong strategic connection to the two settlements, Wonthaggi and Inverloch. The pathway was endorsed again as a part of the advocacy priority plan in 2019. It was listed as one of our top 3 projects. It was again reaffirmed as an advocacy project in 2020 and 2021. This project aligns with the Climate Action Plan and Healthy Communities Plan and is supported by the Council Plan of 21 to 25. It is listed on the regional projects in our active Bass Coast Plan of 2018-2028. Adjacent landowners have been consulted throughout the design stage and will be kept informed. I don't want to risk not delivering a major project like this at this time. There should be no surprises here at all for councillors. We have discussed this many times and it has been on our priority pathway project list. If we don't lock this in now, given the year that we face politically, we may be at risk of losing a great opportunity. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lasser. Any other councillor? Councillor Rooks.
Yeah, completely support what Councillor Sir said. Well done. The only thing I wanted to mention is, having read the draft DEL that's out at the moment, it has a number of policy domains that sit underneath the document. One of them is the strategic infrastructure policy, and it makes it quite clear in that policy that connectivity between towns is critical. So not only were we aware of this back in 2016 when we made these decisions, but the information is still relevant now and it's relevant through the bell. So I reject this notice of motion.
Thank you, Councillor Rooks. Any other, Councillor Tassari?
Thank you, Mayor Whelan. I just, I find this really disappointing. We've had plenty of briefings about this. There was an air of excitement about this pathway. Certainly as ward councillors, we've got together on a number of occasions and spoken about this. And then this comes forward without any discussion at all amongst, well, certainly not with me. I find it incredibly disappointing, disruptive, and I look forward to the pathway coming ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Tassari. Any other councillor wish to speak?
Mr Mayor, I'd just like a question if I can.
Mr Sturton?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
I'm having trouble remembering being briefed on this particular project. I just wonder if this council, this current council, was briefed. Was there a briefing that I missed on the actual logistics of this trail?
Mr Sturton?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I can't recall off the top of my head a specific briefing date. I know that the pathway still forms part of this council's adopted advocacy strategy, and also the council resolution to seek funding through the Growing Suburbs Fund application as well.
So that's the point, is it came to a council meeting, Mr Sturton, as part of council approval to go for funds specifically for it in the Growing Suburbs Fund.
Correct.
Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think it's unfair for our community to experience more delays in getting a safe and healthy way to travel from Wonthaggi to Inverloch. And this motion is quite a significant backflip from Councillor Larke from last September's council meeting, when we decided to apply for the grant from the state government, where he said, "I just want to reiterate that it is a critical link and priority in relation to the overall leisure tracks and trails pathway strategy from Cowes to Inverloch, and I fully support the project." The asks in this motion are unnecessary. It's a shared pathway on public land that has been consulted on and planned on for the past 5 years, as Councillor Lasserve highlighted. I recall councillors being briefed on this in advance of the application to the Growing Suburbs Fund, and all councillors approved the grant to apply for this project back in September with a lot of support within this chamber. For about a year, so council is actively working with the stakeholders and adjoining landowners to the public land that this trail will go on. And we're also actively considering some good suggestions that have come out of that consultation. And it is bizarre to me that there is requested item 5 of this motion to essentially reinvent the wheel with new communication and engagement when that consultation is already occurring. This shared path is also included in the Yallock Marine and Coastal Park as complementary to a state government project. And we keep trying to bring those two projects together when they're both separate. This has been an initiative that we've been working on for 5 years, when the Yallock Marine and Coastal Park was a commitment from the state government back in 2019. So I also point to pages 51 and 52 of the Yallock Marine and Coastal Park infrastructure plan that maps out the alignment of the Wonthaggi Inverloch shared pathway to the State Marine Park and how it aligns with the project. We really don't have the best track record for delivering shared pathways on time, and often it is through no fault of our own. But can we just get on?
Councillor.
Yeah, can we just get on with giving our community and tourists a healthy and excellent way to get around? I don't want to let this kind of red tape get in the way of an excellent project for Wonthaggi and for Inverloch.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? If not, Councillor Larke.
Thank you, Mayor Whelan. And I appreciate the comments by various councillors. However, insofar as the Wonthaggi to Inverloch Inland Trail, in my view, on reflection, despite previous decisions, Council has not done its due diligence as to why 4.7 million of ratepayers' money should be spent in circumstances when the Victorian State Government committed to fully funding a consolidated coastal walking and cycling trail from San Remo to Inverloch. Notwithstanding a potential $3 million contribution from the Victorian State Government Growing Suburbs Fund towards the overall cost of 7.7 million, if the Wonthaggi to Inverloch Inland Trail is ultimately the only route between Wonthaggi and Inverloch, it is a form of cost shifting to council of $4.7 million, which could otherwise be used for other key projects across the Shire. And importantly, the strategic basis, any feasibility study, cost benefit and overall economic benefits and usage of the inland trail are not evidenced and supported by deliberative community engagement and communication. That's the reason for this notice of motion to put the project on hold, pending the final outcome of the Larke Marine Park project, including development of a tourism icon coastal park and trail running the full length from San Remo to Inverloch and fully funded by the Victorian State Government. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Larke. So those in favour of the motion, raise their hands. Those against? The motion is lost.
Abstention, please.
I beg your pardon?
Abstention.
The abstentions are counted as against. That brings us to F2, greening Bass Coast Shire regional towns of Wonthaggi, Councillor Les Larke. Again, Councillor Larke, could you just tell us about this motion without speaking to it?
This motion, Mr Mayor, is all about greening Bass Coast Shire regional town of Wonthaggi main thoroughfares.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Larke. Is there a seconder to this motion? Councillor Holstead. Councillor Larke.
Thank you. Council recognises that Wonthaggi is Bass Coast Shire's regional town and main centre for future expansion of residential, commercial and industrial development. This strategy is designed to help protect and conserve other areas such as Phillip Island from overdevelopment. I also acknowledge officers' comments that are complementary to this notice of motion, which simply puts some boundaries around timeframes for the greening of Wonthaggi's main thoroughfare as a priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Larke. Councillor Holstead.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm supporting this notice of motion because I think it's actually what the council is planning to do anyway. So I can't see a lot of difference between what Councillor Larke is putting to council and what the strategy outlines. So I'm supporting the notice of motion by Councillor Larke.
Thank you, Councillor Holstead. Councillor Rooks.
Thanks, Mayor Whelan. I object this notice of motion. To agree with this notice of motion would just be poor governance. As per the council comments, the strategy is being investigated and developed on this issue across the whole Shire. Good process says we wait for the Shire strategy to be developed before making localised and unplanned decisions. That's all, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rooks. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Lasserve, I got distracted by our audience and he put his hand up at the time. You've nearly bought a farm.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I applaud the actions of, in the Climate Action Plan. Action 23 states, improve vegetation coverage in urban centres. Yeah, I'm concerned that this notice of motion is a bit preemptive of that and that this work is being carried out currently by officers on behalf of the council and was funded, already been allocated in the funding out of the Climate Action Plan budget. It's a great initiative and it's coming out of that Climate Action Plan. We support that as a council and those actions. I'm not sure why this has come to council in the form of a notice of motion other than to make a statement. I will wait until the report and the outcomes are presented to council by the officers in the coming months. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lasservin and Councillor Tessari.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I tend to agree with the words of Councillor Lasservin just then. A lot of this is happening anyway. I find it very frustrating to continually see these notice of motions coming forward without any discussion whatsoever. And what appears to be no attempt to even get support for the notices of motion. So it's starting to get a little bit frustrating, and I applaud the work that's going to be done, the work that's already been done, and I don't see any point to the notice of motion.
Thank you, Councillor Tessari. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Lang? You're on mute, Councillor.
I have a question about the motion, Mayor. Mr. Mayor, may I ask?
Yes.
What consultation has Councillor Larke undertaken with councillors or council officers or community to require this motion?
Councillor Larke?
Well, it's not for me to answer questions, but we have done extensive consultation in relation to the Climate Action Plan, and this NOMS simply focuses on a key priority. The Urban Forest Plan will further add to this engagement and consultation.
Thank you, Councillor Larke. Councillor Lang, did you wish to speak further?
Yeah, very briefly, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the intent of what Councillor Larke would like to do, but it is essentially putting the cart before the horse by asking us to allocate an unspecified amount of funds to our budget without any costing or prior consultation with council staff and the community or fellow councillors. I'm not going to approve a blank cheque for a project already being undertaken. This would be financially reckless with ratepayer funds.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lang. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? If not, Councillor Larke.
Thank you, Councillor Whelan. Timing is of the essence for Wonthaggi, given the significant development and expansion that is occurring, and the current need for urban cooling, carbon sequestration and reducing air pollution to improve citizens' sense of well-being, coupled with important environmental benefits. You only have to walk the streets of that I've mentioned in this particular notice of motion, go out to the northeastern part of Wonthaggi and see hardly a tree in the built form for upcoming 5,000 houses and 12,000 residents. I just see it as a priority that I would like to go forward with. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Larke. We'll put the motion. Those in favour, raise your hands. Against? That's lost. Which brings us to Mayor and Councillor reports. So I've made a request to the councillors that they defer their opportunity to do their councillor reports, which we've usually done a long time ago, and I'd forgotten a few aspects of it, but they will be reported in the minutes, with the exception of one that Councillor Bauer has requested. A key point of his report will be just read out today. Prior to going there, I have an acknowledgement of the passing of John Landy, Vale John Landy, who passed away on the 24th of February at his Castlemaine home. Mr. Landy was well known as a 4-minute mile record breaker and for his famous gesture at the Australian National Championships in 1956. whilst leading Landy stopped mid-race to assist rival Ron Clarke, who had fallen. Both were passed by many of the field. Landy went on to run down the field and win the race. In 2001, as the newly appointed Governor of Victoria, Mr Landy attended the Wonthaggi Summer Show, where he and his wife Lynn watched events and presented awards and spent time with participants. Mr Landy also spent a few days touring South Gippsland and the Latrobe Valley in June 2004. Phillip Island stalwarts Anne and Bob Davey were presented with the Victorian Landcare Award at Government House by Mr Landy in 2005. In October 2005, Mr Landy personally presented a letter which was held in a hidden compartment of the Commonwealth Games baton used in Bass Coast on the 20th of November 2006. The baton was designed by local artist Ian Smith. The theme of the relay was From the Coast to the Hills. I call on Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And as viewers will notice, a lot of us are wearing a yellow and blue ribbon. As they say, bad things happen when good people say or do nothing. On behalf of many in the Bass Coast community, I wish to express a deep shock and horror at the unfolding events in Ukraine since the 24th of February. We affirm Australia's government's position of respecting territorial integrity, full respect of international law and sovereignty. We further believe that disagreements and conflicts should be resolved through dialogue and diplomacy only. We stand by the people of Ukraine and victims of war everywhere. We urge the federal government to approve many more than 1,000 visas currently allocated for Ukrainians displaced by the European conflict. It is my understanding that as a refugee welcome zone, Bass Coast Shire Council is open to engage with the Australian and Victorian governments to explore settlement options across our Shire for people who have been displaced by war. For example, Ukraine is a country with significant experience in agricultural production. These experiences could make it easier for refugees to be accepted in this region and work here. This would be a comfort for those traumatized people, and they would make a positive contribution on many levels, including the needs of the rural sector, hospitality, food, and fibre production sectors in Gippsland. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. Indeed, it's abhorrent to see on a daily basis the attack on democracy and human rights that is occurring in Ukraine. And I abhor all war, and these consequences are seen in all of those ventures that we see inflicted upon innocent countries. Okay, that brings us to H1, 219 to 221 Smiths Beach Road, Smiths Beach, and I call on Mr Sturton to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The purpose of this report is to present planning application 210164, which seeks to use the land as a licensed premises with associated advertising at 219 to 221 Smiths Beach Road, Smiths Beach. The land is presently operating as the Smiths Beach General Store and is a mixed-use zone within the Smiths Beach Commercial Strip on Smiths Beach Road. The application was advertised and received 17 objections, which have all been considered within the report. The application has been considered and assessed against the Bass Coast Planning Scheme. It is recommended the Council resolve to issue a notice of decision to grant a planning permit as per the conditions outlined in the report. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Sturton. Can I have a councillor move and second the motion? Councillor Rooks. Councillor Lasserve. Councillor Rooks.
Thanks, Mayor Whelan. I do support the recommendation of granting the liquor licence. The applicant has gone to a lot of trouble to minimise the impact of this liquor licence application. I think they have listened well to the community, and the hours that it's going to be open have been reduced significantly, and also they're only going to be serving the alcohol from inside, which I think is a good outcome for the liquor licence. We've also, I believe, re-establishing the floodlights for patron safety, both entering and exiting the building. The land is recognised as mixed-use land, and in the current draft Smiths Beach master plan, part of that master plan says that we're looking to further develop service opportunities within such types of land. And I think this application does add a new social space to the area of Smiths Beach, and I think the community will welcome it.
Thank you, Councillor Rooks. Councillor Lasserve.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think that it's a reasonable application, a social gathering place. It'll be walkable for the community. It adds value to a small business, and we know that we need to support that in our community. The applicant has provided council with changes to the red line area and changes to the operational hours after there was negotiations after some of the objections were put forward. All the conditions on the planning permit must be met before the applicant can start operating in that part of that facility. So I think it's an acceptable recommendation. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lasserve. And now the councillor wish to speak to the motion. If not, Councillor Rooks in reply.
No further comments.
I'll put the motion then. Those in favour? Against? It's carried. H2, Heritage Gaps Review and Prioritisation Framework 2020 and the Bass Coast Thematic Environmental History 2021. Mr Sturton to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The purpose of this report is to present Council for adoption the Bass Coast Heritage Gaps Review and Prioritisation Framework 2020 and the Bass Coast Thematic Environmental History 2021. Both these pieces of work follow on an extensive heritage analysis conducted will guide Council to investigate and protect places of potential heritage significance. Further, the thematic history, which is an action from the Heritage Review, outlines the unique history of the Bass Coast region and underpins the remaining actions of the Gaps Review. It is noted that the Bass Coast Shire occupies the traditional country of the Bunurong, and that these pieces of heritage work assess primarily post-contact places. A further recommendation of this work is to undertake a comprehensive heritage study in partnership with the Bunurong Land Council to ensure that Indigenous places are captured. Both the Heritage Gaps Review and Thematic Environmental History position Council to progress heritage planning projects in alignment with both the Planning and Environment Act and the Bass Coast Planning Scheme by protecting places of historical importance and are presented to Council for adoption. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Sturton. I'm going to have a councillor move, Councillor Lasserve, and seconded Councillor Rooks. Councillor Lasserve.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think you can see from the report that this has been a slow burn back in 2002, and I hate to kind of reiterate all the dates in every discussion we've had, but 2002, 2004, 2018, 2019, now we're at 2022. Council has had a good go at it. It's important to understand our heritage, our history, and to consider that when we are protecting and preserving significant heritage places, artefacts, precincts, and our trees. It helps to understand the value of our history and of its land. The costs associated with the review were allocated in the 2019-2020 budget. So I endorse the recommendation, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lasserve. Councillor Rooks.
Thank you, Mayor Whelan. It is really important to recognise the history of our local shire. It says something about the people we are now. I'm glad these two reports continue the Council's work in this area, and this should be applauded. However, I do note that the Thematic Environmental History report talks about a lack of detail of our First Nations people. It says that it is recommended that the gap be addressed by investigating a comprehensive Aboriginal heritage study with the Bunurong Land Council. I really hope they give this a go, because us white people have been here just for over 150 years, but the First Nations people have been here for over 35,000 years. And it just seems we've got our priorities a bit wrong. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rooks. Any other Councillor Holstead?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I completely support Councillor Rooks in his statement with relation to our Indigenous history and how important that is that we also document that. I just wanted to congratulate Council who have obviously organised for this work to be carried out by GML Heritage, and in doing so have presented critical documents that will assist Council in the preservation of Bass Coast Shire and the history. Thank you for the involvement of community organisations such as the Wonthaggi District Historical Society, Phillip Island Conservation Society, Friends of Churchill Island Society, Phillip Island and District Historical Society, just to name a few. It's a fascinating read, giving a detailed recollection of Bass Coast's history. I congratulate all those involved, culminating the required documents and the hours of work it must have taken to produce. It is vital that we continue documenting history while ensuring protection and preservation of identified places of historical significance and/or of heritage value for future generations to absorb and appreciate. I'd also like to point out the significant work taking place around planning policy and strategy at this time by Council, and I congratulate our officers for the work that they're doing in this area. These works will lay the groundwork for Council to draw on when we're considering planning matters, and it's very exciting to see that this strategic work has been addressed across a number of areas, not just with regards to this document. So when it's all pulled together, it will make our job as councillors a lot easier when it comes to planning matters. So thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Holstead. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Look on the screen. Councillor Larke.
Yep.
So Councillor Lasserve in reply.
No, nothing further to add. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Okay, I'll put that motion then. Those in favour? Against? Carried. Brings us to, I just note that we seem to have lost Councillor Larke off the live feed. Do we have to make any efforts to get him back? We believe there's been a few power issues around Wonthaggi today, and that may be impacting Councillor Larke. H3, Bass Coast Industrial Land Study, Economic Analysis, Demand and Supply Assessment. Mr Sturton to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The purpose of this report is to present to Council for adoption a Bass Coast Industrial Land Study. This study presents an economic analysis and an industrial land use and demand assessment that will form the basis of the development of a future Bass Coast Industrial Land Use Strategy. The Bass Coast Industrial Land Use Strategy will be a key planning instrument that will plan and manage the supply of industrial land across the Shire to support economic activity and provide for local employment opportunities. Following adoption of the Industrial Land Study, the draft Industrial Land Use Strategy will commence. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Sturton. We'll have a councillor move the motion for Councillor Tessari.
Can I move an alternative recommendation?
Certainly. Can you read that out? We'll put it on the screen.
Will you put it up on screen? Okay, so the alternative is that Council 1, adopt the economic analysis and industrial land supply and demand assessment, and 2, request the preparation of the Bass Coast Industrial Land Strategy, have regard to the Bass Coast distinctive areas and landscape project, in particular ensuring the location of future industrial land and appropriately considering environmental impacts and significant landscapes.
Thank you, Councillor Tessari. Is there a seconder to that motion? Councillor Holstead. Councillor Tessari.
Quite simply, Mr Mayor, this review was done before the DAL or the DAL came out or was posted, so it's purely just to bring it in line with the recommendations from the DAL.
Thank you, Councillor Tessari. Councillor Holstead.
Nothing further to add. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? If not, Councillor Tessari.
Put it to a vote.
Put it to a vote. Those in favour? Against? Carried. Brings us to H4, the Bass Coast Aquatic Project, and we continue the Mr Sturton show to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The purpose of this report is to present to Council for adoption the Aquatic Leisure Centre feasibility studies for both Wonthaggi and Phillip Island and the project economic and funding strategy. Council adopted the Bass Coast Aquatic Strategy in 2015, which identified a desire for 2 aquatics facilities within the Shire. Draft feasibility studies for each of these facilities was presented to Council in 2021, which enabled community engagement on both designs. Council received a large amount of feedback during the consultation process, which is outlined in the officer report. The proposal for each new facility is grounded by evidence and includes population catchment analysis, based on aquatic infrastructure trends, environmentally sustainable design initiatives, and importantly, a sustainable ongoing operational model for the facilities across the coming decades. Funding to aquatic facilities within the Shire will require significant investment from both the federal and state governments. The economic and funding strategy provides a platform for this advocacy work, which Council will progress coming into both upcoming election cycles. The Leisure Centre feasibility studies for both Wonthaggi and Phillip Island, together with the economic and funding strategy, are presented to Council for adoption. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Sturton. Could I have a councillor move the motion as per the report? Councillor Rooks, Councillor Tessari. Councillor Rooks.
Thank you, Mayor Whelan. Yeah, as summarised by Mr Sturton there, there's been a lot of work that's been done in recent years with regards to the West Coast Aquatic Strategy. And the recommendation for 2 pools for our community message since 2015 and is again put forward in these final feasibility study and the economic strategy. I just want to make a couple of points, and that is to reiterate that 2 pools are required to service the current and future needs of our Shire. 1 pool in Wonthaggi and 1 pool located somewhere on Phillip Island. That there is both a positive economic return on investment and a huge social return on investment by having both these pools in our community. And a lot of planning has gone into the funding of these pools, and I really hope our Shire is fortunate enough to receive significant funding in the upcoming election period.
Thank you, Councillor Rooks. Councillor Tessari.
Thank you, Mayor Whelan. And I echo the words of Councillor Rooks just there. There has been a lot of work put into this strategy. It's been a strong advocacy strategy for a number of years. I've had the privilege of travelling to Canberra a few times to speak to different departments, as the Mayor, as Councillor Kent in various roles as well. One thing we have been commended on for a lot of years now has been our fantastic advocacy, our clear alignment with what we are trying to achieve, and we've been very successful along the way. This is a big ask, I have no doubt about that, but if we stick to our strategy, we stick to our guns, I'm sure we can be very successful, and I commend the officers for this report and also for the strategy moving forward.
Thank you, Councillor Tessari. Any other councillor wish to? Councillor Lasser.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think it is a critical report, this one, but it needs to be understood. I can't justify going back or changing the intent now. We need the funding for these facilities, and there has been no better time than this year, given the political climate, that we make a request to government. There's been many views and reports on aquatic centres, both in Wonthaggi and at Cowes, at Phillip Island, and views have changed over the years. And I appreciate the input that the community have had and the ideas that they've put forward. I think the adoption of this report are in principle, and we need to be strong in our advocacy and to make something happen for our aquatic family. They have waited a long time, and I'd like to see that this is the year we could come to fruition and give them that commitment. So thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Lasser. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Holstead.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As a new councillor on Bass Coast Shire, I just felt that I should contribute to this debate. I know it's been a heavily debated topic in the community as well as in the council chamber. I agree with Councillor Lasser in that it's never been more critical than it is right now. We're going into a state and federal election, and our officers have done a lot of work around advocacy to try and get that funding to deliver both pools for our community, and both I think are warranted. So I would hope that the state candidates and the federal candidates are looking favourably on these projects, because we would certainly be big smiles for them if they were to commit to either to our strategy and to deliver both pools. So thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Holstead. Any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with the words of the last 4 councillors. especially the words of Councillor Sari when he said it's a real big ask. It's a very large amount of money to achieve 2 pools for our area, and I believe the community understands that too. It's a pity when you listen to the media and the media says that both sides of federal are throwing large amount of money to other states, but they're leaving Victoria out of it. I think they sort of believe that Victoria is just won or lost and they don't have to throw the money down here. It's about time Victorians start getting looked after by both parties in the federal level. They can make up their own strategy too. We've gone in with our strategy for 2 pools. I say to the people at the federal level, just don't back away because you think it's a huge amount. Look at it, come up with your own figures too, and think about the people of Bass Coast and think about the people of Victoria too. Tourism industry and so forth. We need to attract the people all times of the year. I'm fully supportive of the 2 pool strategy, but the federal government needs to possibly look at it differently too and look at the whole picture. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Fellow councillors, and members of the public watching on the screen. Since 1981, which is as long as I've been coming to Phillip Island, the need for a public swimming pool on the island has always been a more pressing need than a new pool for Wonthaggi. The current Wonthaggi pool has at least another 10 years left in it, whilst we poor islanders are waiting and waiting and waiting. This report is an appeasement to the island community to show that our needs are not completely ignored. However, 2 months ago, a game-changing concept was introduced by the Phillip Island Aquatic Group, which makes this 2-pool strategy an inferior way to move forward. The Millal Aquatic Recreation Centre, known as Larke, is a public-private enterprise and has at its core a fully integrated training camp with accommodation, including cafe and restaurant, and incorporating an aquatic complex, including a heated 50-metre swimming pool as part of the overall strategy. It also has a gym, bacterium training.
Councillor Bauer, I'll try to bring you back to the subject, which is subject to emotion.
Covering the camera.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm covering the camera. Oh, sorry, people. And on the subject of that is that I believe that the mark needs to be looked at and incorporated into the proposal to make it a far better proposal for our advocacy. However, due to the lack of time, I don't think this is feasible, and therefore we will have to go ahead with the 2-pool strategy.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? I think we've got everything covered. Okay, Councillor Rooks in reply.
No further comment.
We'll put it to a vote. Those in favour? Against? Carried. That brings us to H5, Surf Beach, Sunderland Bay, potential special charge scheme, community information gathering. Mr. Sturton, to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to present to Council the findings of the consultation undertaken with residents of Surf Beach and Sunderland Bay, which was the first step in investigating whether to progress a special charge scheme to upgrade the local roads and drainage of the area. Consultation was undertaken with each of the 1,033 property owners of the area from November through to December in 2021 via a social input website, questionnaire, and receipt of letters, emails, and phone calls. Special charge schemes are one mechanism that Council can utilise to bring legacy infrastructure in line with the expectations. This report recommends proceeding to the next stage of the project process, the development of concept plans, cost estimates, and cost apportionment of a potential upgrade project, at which point a further report will be presented to Council for consideration. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Sturton. Can I have a councillor move the motion as Councillor Kent, Councillor Lasser. Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I'd just like to thank the council officers for the extensive work that they've conducted at Surf Beach and Sunderland Bay. There's been great feedback from the community in regards to the job that they've done there. I'm pleased to say that this work has shown that we can take the next step in this process where costings will take place. We have a legacy here within the community that needs to be addressed. Costing can take place and then the community will have a clearer picture of the cost to themselves. And I'm hoping then that the community will want to take that third step, proceed further. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. Councillor Lasserve.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think that that's a very good point that Councillor Kent's made, that it's just a step in the process. I think the people of these urban roads and drainage upgrades, the first question they come is how much it's going to cost me. Well, this helps set the parameters and develop that program for that community. So I'd recommend recommendation to the councillors. I think we have to proceed. We've had too many legacy issues over the years. We know that all the issues surrounding these unmade roads in our urban estates and what problems they cause. So I'm happy to support the recommendation. Thank you,
Councillor Lasserve. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? There being no other councillor, I'll call on Councillor Kent to close.
No, I'm happy to.
Right, put it to a vote. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. Which brings us to 8.6, response to the petition road surfaces. Mr Sturton, to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Mr Chair. The purpose of this report is to provide a response to a petition received at the council meeting on the 21st of July 2021 that sought traffic calming measures in Surf Beach and Sunderland Bay. The report notes that a traffic signage trial is underway that includes speed monitoring devices which will measure traffic speed before, during and after this trial. It is recommended the council continue this trial until after the Easter period and further to conduct a study to determine equitable alternative treatments of the Shire's unsealed road network and also continue to upgrade its network in accordance with the Urban Roads and Drainage Improvement Policy 2019. It is proposed the council adopt the recommendations outlined within the report and both thank and advise the head petitioner of its decision. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Sturton. Have a councillor move the motion attached to the report. Councillor Holstead.
Thank you,
Councillor Rooks. Councillor Holstead.
Just hold your horses.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I support the recommendation for looking into and I'd like to acknowledge the fact that at the moment the Western Port councillors are dealing with concerns being raised by the community, specifically around Surf Beach and Sunderland Bay with regards to dust. It's not the first group that we've had to deal with when it comes to our unsealed urban roads. We have unfortunately been left with a legacy of hundreds of kilometres of unsealed roads, and it's a very difficult, path to navigate. I'm really pleased that the officers will be providing a report with options about how we can make things a little less strenuous on our community, and I'm really looking forward to what the results of that report are, just to make things a little easier, not just for Surf Beach and Sunderland Bay, but I've spoken with my fellow councillors who've also got areas in their wards that need. Unfortunately, it's the hand we've been dealt, and we just have to plough through one by one, as we're doing with Surf Beach and Sunderland Bay, and next there'll be another one, and then there'll be another one. So I think this is great work, and I thank the officers for putting this up. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Councillor Holstead. Councillor Rooks.
Yeah, I agree with everything Councillor Holstead has said, and I just want to add that it would be easy for council to sit on the urban roads drainage program and just let them roll out over the time, but it's fantastic they've taken this initiative to do the research using Surf Beach Sunderland Bay as, I guess, a guinea pig, and we thank the community there for keeping us informed of the difficulties they're having. So it's just a fantastic initiative that they're doing, both the urban roads drainage upgrade program as well as this study that's going to take place, and I'm really looking forward to seeing if we can get some inexpensive practical solutions to this ongoing problem through our community.
Thank you, Councillor Rooks. Any other councillor wish to speak Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Mayor. Could I put a question to Mr. Sturton?
Certainly.
Mr. Sturton, I look forward to a study being conducted and I believe there's been some great changes within dust suppressants, but I believe that there could currently be a chemical process that could be applied to the roads. I don't know how environmentally friendly that may be, but I think the community would be interested to know if you could put a price on that, if we looked at that for the Surf Beach, Sunderland Bay. It might put things out there for the community to consider.
Mr. Sturton.
Through Mr. Mayor, our officers have conducted investigation of a number of treatments, the chemical treatment being one, and it was an approximate figure was in the vicinity of about $10 million for only Surf Beach, Sunderland Bay. As Councillor Halstead indicated earlier, there's just over 100 kilometres of the unsealed road network that we do have. So having, we believe at this point in time, having an equitable treatment on that entire road network would be quite cost prohibitive, which is why we're going to be looking at other options, whether that is spray sealing or other treatments that we'll bring back to council. But also, just like to say that those sorts of treatments won't appease the drainage issues that are being experienced in these townships as well. It may assist with dust to a degree, but both the urban road and drainage policy that we're looking to roll out is to rectify not just the road issues that we have, but also the drainage issues that our community is experiencing.
Thank you, Mr.
Councillor
Sturton.
Sturton, wish to speak?
Yes, I just think I'll leave that up to the community to decide whether that would be economically viable application. And I think I know the answer already. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Kent. Any other councillor on the serve?
Thank you. And that being said, it's not just the financial implications of it, it's also the environmental implications of doing chemical kind of solutions to our natural environment. So I really want to reinforce that, but also it shouldn't negate the fact that we have to proceed with the urban road and drainage upgrades in these communities. There is no better solution than the road surfacing and the drain structure and the footpaths and the development of these communities. It is putting money into a community that will benefit from it. So I think that should be, I know the community just want these things to happen and it takes a lead time of about 4 years for it to happen. If we look at Piney Bay or one of the other areas that have been done. So it is only just a Band-Aid solution and not the final fix. So people shouldn't think it's going to be the holy grail of it all, because it's they need their roads done and they need it done now.
Thank you, Councillor Lasserve. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? If not, Councillor Halstead, wish to say anything?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, just highlighting on what Mr. Sturton said about drainage, that it is not just about the roads, but the drainage does cause issues. And given what we've seen up north of late, I think it's important that when we're talking about our roads, that we do consider that we as councillors are also talking about our drains. So I thank Mr. Sturton for raising that. It's an important point. Happy to put it to the vote.
Thanks, Councillor Halstead. Those in favour? Against? It's carried. Righto. That brings us to a change of actors. 8.7, Instrument of Appointment and Authorisation. Mr. Mack, to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to recommend that Council appoint the named officers as authorised officers under the Planning and Environment Act 1987 and to revoke authorisation to officers that no longer require it. The recommended changes to instruments of appointment and authorisation will be made to decision. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mack. Can I have a councillor move? Councillor Kent seconded. Councillor Lasserve. Any discussion?
No, Mayor, this is just an operational decision so that officers can carry out their duty.
Okay, any other councillor? Everyone's happy with that? We'll put it to a vote. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. That brings us to H8, Bass Coast Shire Council Procurement Policy. Mr Mack to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The purpose of this report is for Council to consider and adopt an updated procurement policy following its review. Council last adopted the policy in December 2021 and sought a review of the policy within the first quarter of 2022. The review has been undertaken and has highlighted that the policy supports the delivery of services and projects in the approved council budget, providing a framework for officers to undertake duties in a financially responsible and efficient manner. That council officers cannot allocate funds or expenditure to projects that are not approved in the budget. The delegation thresholds are consistent with many other Victorian local governments, including some other large shires. The review has resulted in some minor amendments and clarifications in the policy. The revised policy is recommended to council for adoption. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Mack. Have a councillor move and a councillor second. The councillor Tesari, councillor Brooks. Councillor Tesari.
Thank you, Mayor Whelan. I recommend this, I'll put this recommendation forward. This has been covered off by our Audit and Risk Committee on a couple of occasions now. I have total confidence in their ability. It's been looked at from all different angles. They approve of it and again discussed it just a week or so ago and again gave it a tick of approval. That's enough for me. I'm happy to move forward.
Councillor Rooks.
Thanks, Mayor Whelan. Yeah, a procurement policy is basically a back of house or internal process which can have a positive or negative impact on the efficiency of council operations. I'm really pleased that the design of this procurement policy provides the necessary processes that it will be efficient purchase of goods and services. As I said, it's been benchmarked against other councils and other efficient councils, and it's going to help us manage our huge capital works program. So I support this recommendation.
Thank you, councillor Rooks. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Yes, councillor Bauer.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I've had discussions with council officers on this, and especially the tweaking, and I was one of those that last time had some reservations on the procurement policy, but since discussing it with some of the general managers, I'm now comfortable with the policy and I will support it.
Thank you, councillor Bauer. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? If not, councillor Tesari.
I'll summarise just quickly, Mayor Whelan, if I can, a perfect example of what my councillor sitting next to me has just said then. He had concerns, he followed up and did some extra homework and was very satisfied with what he heard. And I encourage all councillors, if you're not sure about certain things, to ask. The staff are here, they're fantastic and they're more than willing to talk to us and help us through anything that we're not sure of. So I commend my fellow councillor sitting here next to me for doing that, and happy to put it to a vote.
Okay, thank you very much, councillor Tesari. Those in favour? That's those against? That's carried. This brings us to statutory reports, and I request a councillor move and second the resolution that agenda items 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4 and 1.5 be considered as a block. Councillor Tesari, councillor Bauer, those in favour? That's carried. Now, is there any council wish to discuss any of the reports? If not, we have a councillor move and second that. I'll read the motion first, and then I'll give the recommendations attached to agenda items 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4 and 1.5 be adopted. I have councillor Tesari and councillor Bauer. Those in favour? That's carried. There is no urgent business, which brings us to the announcement of the next meeting of council. The next council meeting will be held on the 20th of April 2022 in the Bass Coast Civic Centre. Council Chamber, Bowlia Street, East Wonthaggi, commencing at 1 p.m. Members of the gallery will be required to register their attendance. And I thank everyone for their indulgence today. Our first hybrid meeting, our audience, and our first hybrid meeting, we've had the training wheels on, but I think we've done remarkably well. And I thank everyone for watching the live stream of the Council's meeting. The meeting will now be closed to the public and will end today's live stream. Thank you very much.